Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. It's no secret that the government doesn't have the numbers in the upper house. But what comes as a surprise is the way its legislation is effectively stalled by the opposition. Serious questions are now being asked about the government's floor management as well as its ability to reach out to the opposition. If it fails on these fronts, Mr. Modi's bills will continue to stumble for perhaps 2 years more. With me to discuss the situation is BJP MP Chandan Mitra, Shiromani Akali Dal MP Naresh Gujral, Biju Janata Dal MP Jay Panda and Congress MP Abhishek Singhvi. Chandan Mitra, the BJP has only 46 seats in the Rajya Sabha. The NDA as a whole has just about 60, which means you're way below the halfway mark of 123. And analysts say you're not going to get a majority probably till 2017. So will you accept that the Rajya Sabha is the hurdle where government legislation is likely to repeatedly stumble, perhaps even occasionally fall?
But you may have noticed, Karan, that over the last 2 or 3 days, the government has gone out of its way to try and accommodate the opposition and accepted its demand basically to send these bills, contentious bills, to a select committee. Now, select committee has representation from across the board in the House, and therefore we are hoping that the coal and the mines and minerals bills which have been sent to the select committee will come back after achieving a degree of unanimity in the select committee and then will be placed before the House. The land bill has gone through several committees and several standing committees. Several versions of the land bill have been cleared by committees. So we hope that those opposed to the bill will rise above politics and support a progressive measure which balances the needs of industry and growth with those of the requirement of compensation to the farmers.
You know, Naresh Gujral, you've heard Chandan Mitra's stress on the efforts the government is making to be conciliatory by agreeing to send its bills to select committees. But the truth is that this Rajya Sabha session has seen, first of all, the government's motion of thanks to the President's address being amended. The Mines and Minerals Bill was sent to a select committee when clearly the government yesterday was hoping that would not be the case. And there are major question marks about how seriously the Land Acquisition Amendment could be in trouble. All of this seems to me to suggest that, in fact, the government doesn't have an adequate floor management strategy. It doesn't have an adequate way of reaching out to the opposition. You're part of that alliance. Do you think that, in fact, a floor management strategy and an approach to the opposition is needed, or do you think it's there and working?
Well, Karan, first of all, I'll be very frank with you. The Prime Minister's aggressive speech in reply to the motion of thanks to the President, that gave Congress the opportunity that they were looking for, and the entire opposition got united. Thereafter, somehow, the floor management was really not up to the mark. In recent days, they have made attempts. In fact, the NDA met for the first time after 9 months. I hope going forward, the government will take proactive steps to build consensus in the House, because there are many parties like the Biju Janata Dal, the AIDMK, Trinamool Congress, who have, or Mr. Mulayam Singh's party, who command a sizable number of votes or seats in the upper house. They have to be taken on board if government is serious about its agenda.
You said two very interesting things, and I want to come back to you for further elucidation. First of all, you're saying at a time when, in fact, the Prime Minister should be reaching out to the opposition, his combative, aggressive speech put them off and gave them reason for rancor rather than appeasement. And you said a second important thing. In 9 months, you said the government hasn't even met its own NDA allies. So it's been deficient both with the opposition and its allies.
Well, now we've been told that we will meet more often, but the fact of the matter is that the first meeting took place just 2 days back on the land issue, 15 minutes before the land bill was going to be introduced.
You know, Jay Panda, the government's key hope, and you heard Naresh Gujral mention this, lies with parties like the BJD and AIADMK to begin with, because they are neither part of the UPA nor part of the NDA. Now, yesterday in the Lok Sabha, you decided to walk out rather than vote against the land acquisition bill. Will you do the same thing in the upper house, or might you go one step further and this time vote with the government, which they need?
I want to reiterate, as you know, since May of last year, the Biju Janata Dal has consistently maintained a stand that we are going to play the role of a constructive opposition to this NDA government. And that means that we are not going to be against bills just for the sake of being against, but we have specific agendas. So, for example, you've seen we have, in fact, supported certain items like the insurance bill, which we believe are crucial to provide insurance facilities to many poor farmers and poor citizens of India. Now, when it comes to the land bill, Karan, I want you to appreciate something. We had been specifically demanding certain amendments, and the government did reach out and accommodated some of them, but not all of them. So I think it was a recognition that they were making some movement towards what we had wanted. For example, the amendment on prosecutions has been taken almost exactly as per what we had moved earlier. But they didn't move all the amendments we had hoped for. So the middle path that we took was not to vote against it and not to go completely all the way and support it, but to recognize that the government did actually reach out. Now, in the Rajya Sabha, we are likely to take a similar stand, unless, of course, the version of the bill that is presented in the Rajya Sabha is substantially different and causes us either to take a more stringent or a more liberal view.
Abhishek Singhvi, I understand very clearly the Biju Janata Dal position. They are halfway between supporting and opposing. They're, in other words, choosing a middle path, which is still useful to the government. Now, your party, the Congress, is adamantly opposed to any amendment to the land acquisition, so there's no question if you're supporting the new bill when it comes to the Rajya Sabha. You've succeeded in ensuring that other bills like coal and mines and minerals get referred to a select committee, and they've gone. Chandan Mitra confirmed that earlier on. But what about the insurance bill, which has already been through a select committee, and it's a bill that in absolute essence your party agrees with? In fact, you wanted to do it yourself but couldn't. Now the BJP has done a U-turn and is prepared to do it. Will you support it, or will you play politics over it?
Let me answer your narrower question and then add something on a larger issue. As far as the narrow question is concerned, yes, we made no bones about what you've said, Karan. The land acquisition bill is something very dear to us. And firstly, the manner, until yesterday, the substantive content was radically different. The manner was atrocious. Yesterday, changes were made. They still don't meet our demands, and we are going to oppose it. Win or lose, we are going to oppose it. We are going to try and generate consensus to oppose it. As far as the insurance bill is concerned, I have said myself in the briefing, our opposition is not per se and all. It is based on some individual clauses, and there is scope for discussion. But the government would have to carry all sections of the House together, because there are large sections out there who are much more opposed to the insurance bill than we are. So that's a larger issue. Ultimately, Karan, the obligation of carrying bills through the House has to be on the government. But I want to make 2 or 3 very quick points in less than half a minute, and that is, there is certainly something wrong with the approach of the government and floor management. Yesterday, Karan, I'm very happy to hear Mr. Chandan Mitra saying what he said, but he knows very well, he was in the House, I was in the House. From 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., the government was adamant in not agreeing to a select committee. Mr. Chandan Mitra was very reasonable just now, and I entirely agree with him. But was his party 1/10 as reasonable yesterday till 8 p.m.? And to add crowning glory, Karan, at 8 p.m., till 8 p.m., the leader of the House, Mr. Jaitley, was for a dismissal or a vote. And Mr. Venkaiah Naidu, the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, is prepared to go to select committee. There's a clear divergence. What Mr. Naresh Gujral just now said, this unilateralism. First of all, this arrogance of 323. Then within the BJP, only Mr. Modi will decide, or a small coterie will decide where is the NDA. And lastly, Karan, the fact that even in an amendment to the motion of thanks, just one small point seems to have escaped everybody. Why could the government, for the life of me I can't understand, if there was proper floor management, not have agreed to the amendment itself? They could have been the amending force. What was the amendment?
All right.
Not enough is said about corruption.
You made several good points. You made several good points. Let me bring in Chandan Mitra. Chandan Mitra, you're hearing this point about floor management. You're hearing this point about being obstreperous or not conciliatory in the stand you took yesterday over referring the matter to the standing committee for 6 hours from 2 separate sources. An ally, Naresh Gujral, an opponent, Abhishek Singhvi. Now you've got this problem of the Rajya Sabha confronting you for 2 long years. It's not going to disappear till 2017. Do you believe you need to at least listen to Naresh Gujral, become conciliatory, find a way of reaching out to the opposition, find a way of reaching out better to your allies, and be more amenable in your attitude and in your response on the floor of the House?
Has a point, and I entirely agree with him that there has been a lapse in terms of at least reaching out to our own allies. They are our allies. We fought the elections together, and there is a certain responsibility that devolves upon us to ensure that we can carry them along. And if they have some genuine concerns, we must first and foremost address them. So that's a point well taken, but I'm sure that the government will now be very much more mindful, and these NDA meetings will become fairly regular in their occurrence. Now, as far as Mr. Singhvi is concerned, I appreciate kind of his standpoint from where he comes. The Congress party has a substantially larger number in the Rajya Sabha, and they see a great opportunity to embarrass and put the government on the back foot. Now, that is the job of the opposition, and I don't grudge him that. But the point is that many of these bills in particular have gone through standing committees. The Congress party has made its point in the committees, and having made the point, I believe that it is the responsibility of a responsible opposition, led by the Congress, because they are the biggest party, to actually enable the new legislation which is aimed at the country's development and progress.
Can I come in?
Go through and not play politics entirely on it.
Can I come in at that point and suggest this to you? There is a problem each time the BJP reaches out to Congress, because you remind them of how, when they were in power, you would thwart them, whether you thwarted them on insurance, which you held up, or whether you simply thwarted them by holding up the functioning of Parliament. So when BJP reaches out, you evoke the wrong memories. Why not get someone like Naresh Gujral, who gets on better with them, to do the floor reaching out to them? Why not get your TDP allies? Use your allies who have better relations with Congress to affect better floor management and a better relationship with the opposition.
Well, Karan, that's a suggestion. I'm sure that my party leaders, who hopefully may be watching this program, would consider this seriously.
Naresh Gujral, if in fact Arun Jaitley and Venkaiah Naidu were to come to you and to say, we rub up Congress the wrong way, we bring out the worst memories of the past that we want to somehow overcome, why don't you reach out on our behalf? Would you and your party, and do you think people like the TDP would be willing to offer their good services?
Karan, they don't even have to ask me. They know that I'm always available, and whatever I can do, I would certainly do, because I'm part of the alliance and I want this government to succeed. They came with an economic program. We want the country to move forward. This window of opportunity which is open today for India will not be open for too long if investment is not invited. So whatever we can do, we will stand by the BJP.
Can I ask you this, Naresh Gujral? I raised this as a somewhat eccentric, idiosyncratic suggestion myself as an anchor on a show. It got welcomed by Chandan Mitra. Clearly it struck a chord with you. Has it never occurred to the BJP leadership to use their allies who may have better relations with the opposition than they do? Has it never occurred to Mr. Jaitley or Mr. Venkaiah Naidu?
Well, as I said, till a couple of days back, they were not using our services. I do hope going forward, they will realize that we bring some value to the alliance, and they will use, and it's not just me, there are many of us who can bring a lot of value to the alliance.
Yours, Jai Panda, is a state with critical special needs. Your Chief Minister has been talking about them for a decade and more. Successive governments have heard but not acted. Now, yesterday or day before, he had a quiet, unpublicized meeting with the Prime Minister in Delhi. Is there any sense in which there is an understanding being reached between Naveen Patnaik and Narendra Modi that you will support more and more of government legislation in return for specific decisions to do with, say, special category status, favorable decisions on mineral royalties, the halting of the Polavaram project or whatever?
This is actually consistent with what we have been saying for these past 9 months or so. For example, on the whole issue of the coal bill and the minerals bill, which now emphasizes auctions, let me reiterate that Naveen Patnaik was one of the very first leaders anywhere in the country to to demand auctioning of mineral resources. And therefore, this is very much in line with what we want for the country. But there have been certain deviations which have adversely impacted our state, for which we are responsible. For example, in the coal auctions, there has been a change of the end use of some of the mines, which means the earlier mines kept aside for process industries. Odisha has lots of these process industries which use coal, are now deprived, and that also deprives revenue to the state of Odisha. So obviously we have to stand up for our requirements. So yes, the answer is that anything which is in national interest and does not compromise Odisha's interest is something we will support. So and that's what we've been saying as a constructive opposition.
So in a nutshell, there is room behind closed doors, out of publicity and out of the public glare, for the two of you to reach a mutually beneficial understanding. I'll help you if you help me.
Well, I think that's the way all politics ought to be. You ought to try and find middle ground where you look for the larger goal for the country, and that the people that you represent, in our case, the 42 million people of Odisha, do not get short shrift. And, I was listening a little bit earlier about the flow management. Now, that's obviously something for the BJP and its allies to talk about, not about a constructive opposition member. But let me tell you, all I could make out was in terms of the aggression, of the so-called aggression of the PM speech, I thought that the speeches in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha were identical. And in reality, the problem only on the Rajya Sabha, which means, let's face it, there is a numbers issue in the Rajya Sabha which is not there in the Lok Sabha. And that's the real issue that needs to be got to the bottom of.
And I suspect that was the point Naresh Gujral was making, that because of the numbers issue, you make a different speech in the Rajya Sabha and you make a different speech in the Lok Sabha. You can't have a one formula fits both houses, because then you're getting one house wrong. I can see, Abhishek Singhvi, how Jay Panda can hope for a, if I can use that phrase, quid pro quo relationship. You help me, I'll help you, which will benefit both Mr. Modi and Naveen Patnaik. Clearly, such a relationship is not possible for Congress. On the other hand, I can see how you would be keen to thwart BJP because they thwarted you. Revenge is always sweet. But the danger you run, if you keep obstructing government reform, is that you'll end up alienating the middle classes. You look obstructionist to industrialists and investors. How far will you run that risk just for the pleasure of thwarting the BJP and getting your own back?
See, answering your question specifically, the trust deficit between the Congress and the BJP is far, far more than anyone between the BJP and the BJD, who were at one time allies. So that trust deficit can't be compared. As far as thwarting is concerned, let me tell you, let any statistical survey, and there are many in the Rajya Sabha publications, Karan, show that from 2004 to 2014, compare it with 2008 to 2004, 1998 to 2004, or compare it now, the degree of disruption, the manner of disruption, the amount of constructive support, Congress has been always much more supportive as an opposition, and Congress has suffered much more as the party in power than the BJP when it is in opposition. So therefore, I think those statistics are clear. We don't oppose for the sake of opposition. We certainly will do it if we are insulted, treated shoddily. Our main concerns, now just consider, Karan, just half a second. If you go through something land acquisition bill with so much of changes which your two opposition leaders say, and we change it over 3 years, and you then pass it in the first 6 months through an ordinance, and you expect us to be quiet or constructive or cooperative, the answer is for you to see.
Let me go back to Naresh Gujral. Naresh, you're the one who is an ally of the BJP, yet you were very candid and honest about the poor floor management, the lack of strategic sense when the Prime Minister, who needs the opposition, actually starts attacking them instead just at the wrong time. Do you see real change happening? Because the problem is parties the size of Congress and BJP have inbuilt patterns of thinking and traditions, and they don't change very easily. So do you really see change happening over the next 2 years? Or are you genuinely worried that what you're seeing now could replicate itself for 2 long years?
Karan, the responsibility of running the House always rests with the government of the day. So I will say that BJP has to make amends. They have to treat the opposition with respect and with dignity. And for that, there are no two ways. To a large extent, there are other parties whose interests will have to be accommodated. There will be some demands. This happens in every democracy. So I think there will be more give and take. But I'm sure BJP has now seen that if they don't accommodate, they will only have problems and the House will get stalled. So I'm very hopeful that going forward, they would make amends.
Chandramitra, you've heard what Naresh Gujral has said. You yourself hope that leaders of your party are watching this program. Let's assume they are. Will they heed the advice from Naresh Gujral that the BJP has to make amends? It has to reach out. The responsibility is the BJP's.
Look, first point is Naresh's point about more frequent coordination between the BJP and its NDA allies. That's an absolute must. Second, parties that are neither with NDA nor with UPA. Now, some of them are, of course, no point even talking to them, like the CPM. They are inveterate opponents of development per se. So no point. Development means is anathema to them. So obviously there is no question of trying to elicit their support on developmental issues. But there are others who are not so pathetically anti-development as them, and certainly we should reach out to them. As far as the Congress is concerned, now yes, there is a long history, there is bitterness, we are major competitors across the country, so there are limits to how much we can expect the Congress to concede, there are limits to how much we can concede to them. But certainly, I can only say that through the standing committees and the select committees, a broad degree of agreement on national issues which are useful, because development is something common. And the Congress also did a lot of development to the country. I am not sitting here to dispute the entire record. So I think we must come to a basic understanding on certain issues, and we can fight on many others, enough issues to fight on, but there are few issues on which I hope we can agree.
Chandramitra, let's hope your leaders, as you said, are not only watching this program by listening, let's hope they take the words of Naresh Gujral to heart. The BJP, as he said, has to make amends. My thanks to my four guests for joining me, and there we end this particular episode. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye.